but that's beside the point.
You got all kinds, I mean, you got all kinds of stories for the barbershop.
It sounds like somebody's pulling up. Clear up the misinformation about your background on criminal justice.
I was probably one of the first elected prosecutors in the country to say we need to have reentry initiatives. And I designed from scratch and wrote out a program that focused in particular on young men who are arrested for drug sales. My policy was that we were not going to jail people for simple marijuana. And by the way, right now, I believe we need to just actually legalize the whole thing, and that's part of my platform.
For sure.
Shakur over here is a dean of students, and he works with our young people every day.
I'm from Philly, born and raised, uptown to be exact. I've been in education for 10 years. I started off as a teacher's assistant in a school in North Philly.
Only 1% of teachers in public schools are black men.
Yeah, for sure.
1%. The statistics are if a black child has a black teacher by the end of third grade, they're like 13% more likely to go to college.
To succeed.
Wow.
Yeah.
But to go to college even. And you know, part of actually my focus and agenda is what we've got to do to create incentives, which really are not necessarily incentives in terms of the will, but also we don't pay teachers enough.
Right.
Student loan debt is an issue, you know, and thinking about how we create incentives to actually recruit and retain, because we know the benefit to overall society, and in particular to our children. You know, the beauty of human nature also is that when you set a high bar and you give people the chance to reach it, especially starting with our children, they will go for it every time.
Every time.
Every single time. If you give a child from the beginning of their life all reinforcement that tells them they can be anything and do anything, and that they are loved and that they are special. I mean, that is one of the keys, I think, to what we can do for the children of our families, our community, right? I mean, I think about it, you know, I grew up at a time where, you know, Aretha was singing "You Are Young, Gifted, and Black." And every signal we received told us that.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, we weren't particularly special, but everybody told us we was.
Right.
And we believed them.
But what we were talking about is representation and why it matters.
That's
And
right.
Being able to see yourself as a heroic figure.
Yeah, right.
Everybody feels lonely. Everybody
Yeah, that's
feels
true.
like just
That's
things
true.
aren't going your way. And when you look around, the way that society is being constructed, the way that it's just everything is so against you. No matter who you are, you're going to have to hit the same roadblocks in life.
As a black man, you know, it was about 2 weeks ago you released your plan for black men. And first, let me say thank you for doing it.
I loved it.
But it's based on work I've been doing for years, by the way.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
But a lot of times brothers don't feel seen.
Yeah, but understandably.
And so literally having a plan that says, black men, this is for you,
Right.
was extremely important. What we're seeing is getting more brothers to actually understand what's in the plan. But you also talked about other things. And I mean, I read the plan. I think it
So,
was 9
for
pages.
example,
I
to
read
your
it all.
point, I also know history to understand why people feel the way they do right now, and it's based on fact. You look at World War II. Okay. The people who went to fight that war, who were predominantly men, went to go fight that war. They came back, and America called them the greatest generation because they did such an incredible job, and so many gave their lives for it. So the policy was, we should invest in the greatest generation. They've done so much for our country. And one of the things that we did as policy to create federal programs to help them, including giving an incredible infusion of resources into helping people buy homes, to become homeowners.
Right.
But of course, we still had, at that time, incredible racism within the institutions.
Right.
So in spite of a policy that was supposed to benefit everyone, which boosted a lot of people, our black servicemen did not benefit from that boost as much as others did. So you just look at these different moments in time, right? You look at redlining. I mean, it happened here in Philly. It happened all over the
Right.
country, which is black people who were ready to buy homes in areas where they could then build the wealth right? We're not allowed to buy in those places. And today, Black families are 40% less likely to own their homes than others, okay?
Right.
So part of my plan and policy is recognizing that, to give people a $25,000 down payment assistance if they're a first-time home buyer, which just helps people literally get their foot in the door. And then folks will save up. They'll do what they do to make the mortgage. Part of my plan is a $6,000 child tax credit for the first year of your child's life, because as we know, the vast majority of our parents, young fathers and mothers, want to parent their children well, but don't always have the resources to do it. Part of my plan is about dealing with Black men's health. I mean, we know the statistics. First of all, Black people are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. When we talk about our men, like twice as likely to die from things like colon cancer and prostate cancer.
I lost my wife last month to colon cancer.
I know you did.
So
I
when you
know.
talk about colon
I
cancer,
know you did. And I'm so sorry.
I appreciate that. But the truth is,
I lost my mother to colon cancer.
you're so right. We have to utilize our platforms to make sure that people understand early screening, early detection. And for brothers, like, we'll come in the barbershop, we'll talk about everything else, but we won't talk about health care.
Yeah.
We won't talk about those things that could mean life or death.
That's exactly
So-
right. And the
so
quality
it's-
of life, too.
Yes.
Right? I know and see and understand the dimensions of life that we are talking about when we talk about our men. And it's about home ownership. It's about being a business person. It's about having dreams. It's about having ambitions. It's about education. It's about health. And yes, it is about the election, but it's more than that. Because part to the point that we've been talking about, and you talked about so beautifully, when people feel alone, it's very disempowering. Right? When you feel it's like you against the world, it's very disempowering. And I want people to know that they are not alone.
I tell people all the time, there's going to be a president, there's going to be members of Congress.
Right.
There are going to be governors, there's going to be members of the General Assembly, there are going to be mayors and city council. The question that we have to ask ourselves as Black men, are we going to have a say in who those people are going to be?
That's exactly right.
And when you don't vote, those folks still get elected. You just don't get to
That's
decide.
exactly right. So I wrote with Cory Booker the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act when I was in the Senate. And there were a bunch of folks who did not want it to happen and worked against it. And we still need to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, okay? But they worked against it. And then those are the same people who will quietly suggest, see, you shouldn't vote because nothing happens when you do. Because there are forces that also trying to obstruct the good work. And here's the thing, though. If you don't vote, then you're not deciding who's in the positions of power to make decisions like, do we pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? You see the vicious cycle?
Right. Yeah.
So you don't vote, and then you end up taking yourself out of the game. And we should never take ourselves out of the game.
There's a national spotlight every 4 years around the big ticket, the presidential election and everything like that. There's also very important to make sure that you're voting in your local elections also.
Good.
Your judges, your state reps,
Absolutely.
your city council people,
Sheriff.
and also being engaged in that process so that you understand how all of these different functions work together.
Right. To get the word out, whether people vote for me or not, whether they vote or not. Well, although we want to encourage them to vote for me.
Everybody should
but
vote.
but let's get the word out so people also understand what they have a right to expect and demand. Because this is not about doing anybody a favor. It's literally the right thing to do. Period.
Well, you survived. You survived the barbershop.
I had no question about that. Were you worried?
I know. I mean, I knew you was going to.
I think you were worried.
No, I wasn't.
You all right?
You were
Okay.
Harris. You were Harris. That's how we built. Let's thank the Vice
you all
President for
for
hanging
this
out with us a little
Thank
bit.
you for letting me come into the barbershop. I know what a sacred space this is. I mean, it's so
And
funny.
keep
I was
some
going to say
conversations that
well, but this is where America's news gets told.
No, for sure.
Right? Like all the press were here. This is where America's news gets told.